All right, let's get right into it. We're going to deconstruct a really powerful new way of looking at your own mind. And what's so cool about this model is that it smashes together these deep psychological ideas with, believe it or not, cutting edge principles from cybersecurity. What we're really building here is a blueprint for what you could call high availability consciousness. But, to really get a handle on our own internal system, it actually helps to first look at an external one that's literally designed to hack it. So let's talk about something called the Khaeos Protocol. It's this fascinating project that's basically turned a very specific unsettling feeling into an art form. It's this super carefully engineered psychological experience that, and I'm not kidding, basically weaponizes our nostalgia. I'm sure you know the exact feeling I'm talking about, right? You're just scrolling online and you see this kind of hazy image of a 90s shopping mall, and it just feels, I don't know, warm, safe, nostalgic. But then, just for a split second, it glitches. It flickers. The colors go all weird, a shadow pops up where it shouldn't be, and poof. That feeling of safety just vanishes, and in its place is this creeping dread. That is the feeling they're targeting. So how in the world do they build this feeling? Well, it all starts with the emotional engine, a concept called anemoia. Now, this isn't about your personal childhood memories. No, this is different. It's that collective longing for a shared cultural memory, like the whole vibe of the late 90s. That feeling that things were stable and optimistic. It doesn't even matter if you actually lived through it. That feeling is what creates this perfect, dreamlike foundation for them to build on. Okay, so once they have that foundation, they layer on something called canopsia. I mean, just think of all those pictures of dead malls or empty school hallways you see online. It's not just that they're empty. It's that heavy, eerie feeling of absence, right? It's the presence of what should be there but isn't. And by stripping all the people out of these normally bustling places, the project immediately makes you, the viewer, feel totally isolated, totally vulnerable. And this is where it all connects to a really big, kind of heady idea, hauntology. The basic theory goes like this. Our present is basically haunted by all the futures we were promised back in the 20th century that never actually happened. So those empty spaces, they're not just empty. They're like these strange monuments to a canceled future. They're the ghosts of a world that was supposed to be full of endless optimism, and then it just stopped. And this is where you can see the fundamental shift so clearly. In traditional horror, what happens? There's some monster outside, and your goal is to survive it. Simple. But with this corrupted nostalgia model, the unease is completely internal. The monster gets replaced by what Jung called the shadow, and the goal isn't survival anymore, it's integration. See the difference? You're not running from something in the hallway, you're finally confronting something deep inside yourself. Okay, so this brings us to the absolute core metaphor of this whole thing. That perfect, safe, nostalgic image, that's your conscious ego. It's your idealized, curated self, kind of like your public profile. But that sudden visual glitch, that's a perfect metaphor for the repressed Jungian shadow finally breaking through the cracks. The visual corruption you're seeing on the screen is meant to mirror a psychological corruption happening inside. And this all leads us to a pivotal quote from Carl Jung that is, and I mean this, the absolute bedrock for everything we're about to talk about. He said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This is the bridge, right here, from that whole corrupted nostalgia idea to a real functional model of your mind. To put it in system terms, it means one simple thing. Unobserved processes will always dictate the final output. And now for the big reveal. We're going to take that big mystical concept of fate and we're going to reframe it as something super concrete, something from IT. Ready? Fate isn't destiny. Fate is just latency. System latency. It is literally just the time lag, the gap between something triggering deep inside your system and your conscious mind finally becoming aware of it. I mean, think about it. If you do something and you only figure out why you did it hours or days or even weeks later, that delay is what creates the illusion that some external force is pulling your strings. That's fate. So this brings us to the master theory. The big idea is that we can actually model the human psyche using the same principles from systems architecture and cybersecurity that keep the internet running. And the goal? To create what engineers call a high availability system, which is just a fancy way of saying a system that stays stable and keeps performing even when it's operating in a totally chaotic environment. So how does this architecture work? Well, it all starts by dividing your mind into two operational layers.
First up, you've got the data plane. Think of this as your unconscious. It's a high-throughput, super chaotic layer where all your raw emotions and survival instincts are just firing off constantly. It's generating a massive amount of data. Then you have the control plane. This is your conscious mind, or what we'll call the Archivist. It's a calm, cool monitoring layer. Its job isn't to create all that chaos, but just to observe it, orchestrate it, and log everything that's happening down in the data plane.
Okay, so where does the shadow fit into this system? Well, this model reframes it in purely technical terms, which is so powerful. The shadow isn't some evil monster you have to go to war with. No, it's just legacy code. Seriously, think of it like an old survival script written for a totally different environment, like you as a kid, that was never properly updated or removed. It's still running in the background, but the code is completely unsuited for the operating system of your current life. So what's the modern strategy for dealing with this kind of thing? I mean, in cybersecurity, you would never just try to delete a sophisticated piece of legacy code that's deeply integrated into the system. That's a rookie mistake. You crash the whole thing. Instead, the strategy is to sandbox it. Step 1, you detect the script signature when it starts to run. Step 2, you isolate that process in a kind of mental container. Step 3, you observe its output, you see what it's trying to do, without actually letting it execute and take over your behavior. And finally, step 4, you instrument that pattern, basically turning what was a system-wide threat into a specialized, contained tool that you can actually use. And this all leads to a really important paradox, so listen up. The goal is not to get to zero chaos. You don't want to eliminate that chaotic data plane. Why? Because a system with zero chaos, zero entropy, well, it's static, it's unchanging, it's dead. The real goal is to optimize your signal-to-noise ratio. You let the chaos exist, you let it do its thing, but you make damn sure that everything it does is seen, logged, and understood by your conscious control plane. So to keep this whole system running smoothly, your inner archivist needs a kind of cognitive health dashboard. It's got 4 key things to keep an eye on. First, there's decay. That's about refactoring your old, outdated beliefs and habits. Then, evolution, making sure your psyche can actually scale up to handle new, more complex parts of your life. Third is cosmic flow. That's assessing all the external inputs and improving how you interact with the world. And finally, the cognitive mirror. This is huge. It's recursively logging your own performance, so the system is constantly watching itself to get rid of blind spots. Look, if you boil this entire operational principle down, it comes to one simple, powerful sequence. Visibility precedes control, and control precedes optimization. You have to say it in that order. You cannot optimize a system you can't control, and you absolutely cannot control a system you can't even see. And so this totally redefines the ultimate goal here. The quiet prize at the end of all this work, it isn't some mystical state of enlightenment. It's not about defeating your inner demons. It's much more practical. It's simply about maintaining low latency observability. And what is that? It's the ability to see your own system running in real time with the absolute bare minimum delay between something happening inside you and you knowing that it's happening. And that brings us to the final big question. And this is one for you to really think about, for your own consciousness. If your life is running in real time, and if fate is really just the delay between a trigger and your awareness, then how much of a delay, how many seconds of latency are you personally willing to tolerate before you can look at that system and truly, honestly call it your own?